President Samora Machel and a group of senior government officials are heading back to Maputo following a summit with other African leaders. They never reach their destination.
We just received the first pictures of the scene of the aircraft accident in which Mozambican President Samora Machel was killed. It appears that if human or navigational errors were the cause of the fatal accident.
A nation was plunged into mourning. Samora Machel, a war hero from the liberation movement, was the first democratically elected president of Mozambique.
Viva disciplina! Viva organização! Viva o silêncio!
The crash raised instant suspicion that the South African apartheid state may have been involved.
I received a call. I know it was early morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning, after the crash, either from the Minister of Police, Mr. Legransi, or from one of his officials, to say that there was a crash of a aircraft, passenger aircraft, and the police were there, South African police, and they thought that one of the victims, one of the persons who died, could have been Samora Machel. I also arranged for a message to be sent to the Mozambique government.
Minister, the body of the president was lying right here.
Where?
Right at this spot, and we just put him in the casket. Is this the spot?
The bodies were already put into plastic bags with a zip. And they unzipped it, and I immediately recognized his face. His skull was very, very badly injured.
Suspicion of South African involvement stemmed from heightened political tensions in the region at the time. Machel had just returned from a war council with Angolan, Zambian and Zahirian leaders. On the agenda was South Africa and Malawi's support to the rebel armies of UNITA and Renamo. South Africa put together an international commission of inquiry headed by Judge Cecil Margot. This is the actual cockpit voice recording of the final moments before the crash. The Margot Commission concluded that the crash had been caused by pilot error. Russian aviation experts later issued a conflicting report saying that a false mobile radio beacon such as this one was used to lure the plane off course. And they based this on the sudden 37-degree turn to the right while the plane was heading straight for Maputo. This was rejected by the late Judge Cecil Margot.
The most thorough investigation has taken place, and it's not only a matter of opinion, it's a matter of common sense. There is not a tittle of proof, not a jot of evidence to prove that there was a decoy beacon.
In 1998, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission reopened a probe into the fatal crash. Mrs. Machel testified that previous attempts had been made on her husband's life.
One of the investigations that had been incomplete at the time was the involvement or otherwise of the South African government and or the South African Defence Force in what I consider was the murder of Samora Machel. There were certain suspicions which were supported by some evidence of people who claimed that there was a beacon that was carried at the back of a military vehicle that was intended and in fact did lead the aircraft astray into believing that they were already at Maputo airport, when in fact they were so very close to the mountain.
I can therefore give the Machel family, as well as the President of Mozambique and his government, that this matter is enjoying a serious investigation by a team that is committed.
But despite top-level investigations, until now, all evidence proved to be inconclusive, with many myths and urban legends complicating real evidence. One journalist who's followed the Samora Machel investigation closely is Mpikeleni Duma. Over the years, he's written many articles about the mysterious plane crash.
In 1987, I was assigned to write a piece on the plane crash of Samora Machel. It was a year after the plane crash, in 1986, October 19. So the story has intrigued me in many ways. So it was difficult to write that time because we didn't know exactly what happened, but there were a lot of speculations that it was a false beacon, but other people said it was a human error.
Duma says a breakthrough came in 2003 when he received a letter from an inmate at a Pretoria prison.
A former CCP operator wrote a letter to the Sowetan confessing his involvement in the death of Samora Machel. I went to visit him. I doubted his story first.
Hans Low, a former Special Forces and CCB operative, was serving a 28-year sentence in Pretoria for an unrelated killing. After serving only 11 years, he was released last month and he was ready to speak. After the break, Hans Low speaks out.
Our main target was to make sure that Machel is dead.
Hans Low is a South African citizen, but he lived in Namibia, where he joined the South West African Special Forces.
In 1985, we in actual fact crossed over to South African Special Forces. Namibian Special Forces actual fact closed down, and we were incorporated into 5-1 Commando, which was a subunit of 5 Rec. This is where I started working very closely with South African Special Forces.
According to this book, he was the first black soldier to be accepted into this elite group.
If there's a need to arise for a specific operation and they need a specific operative with a specific skill or capability, then they draw it from the different units.
In March 1986, he took part in an operation in Phalaborwa, which killed several children.
We went to the Shabin and Lulukani, where on instructions, we throw 5 grenades inside the Shabin. And as a result of that, 6-7 children get killed, school children, and over 60 to 70, 75 of them get wounded. I don't want to sound bitter, I harbor no grudges against nobody. I come into the system, specifically Special Forces, as a young man with big ambitions. I just want to be a professional soldier at the end of the day. My father was a soldier, serving in the Second World War. But I end up, to become a cold-blooded killer.
Later that year, in October, he was called up for another special operation.
When we come down from Andangwa to 5 Reki, we come down to 5 Reki, where we was done in telling his briefing.
Was the target mentioned by name?
That target was specific mentions, the plane of Samora Machel that will be expected that night in that specific vicinity. It was a huge operation. There was a lot of different forces involved. The team where I was in, our main task was, if the plane never went down, the plane being devised or strategized, used by the original with the main group, then I was part of the backup team to shoot down the plane with the surface-to-air missiles.
We drove with Low to the crash site at Mbuzini.
We were actually in the vicinity of that area on the Friday because the plane was expected back into Maputo either on the Friday night or on the Saturday night. So we were in position, but because there was a Relimo post not far from there, so it was difficult for us to stay during the day there. But there was a big military built up.
This is my first time after the incident happened 22 years ago, nearly 22 years ago. It's going to bring back, bad memories, but I suppose I have to deal with it.
We arrive in Buzini, where the 11 million rand monument marks the crash site.
That site is Mozambique. If you look to that hill, that site, that's Mozambique. Where we stand now is South Africa. The fence that divided the three countries, Mozambique, South Africa and Swaziland, is running through that hill. We were two teams armed with portable SAM missiles, surface-to-air missiles. When the plane reached that hills, it was already lower than 1,000 feet. Okay. And the wheels to prepare to land was already out. So the pilots that night, 22 years ago, thought they were landing in Mozambique. And as the plane was coming in, the first touchdown was on top of this hill here. That was the first touchdown, is where the undercarriage fall out, or the wheels itself. That's where the plane flew into the ground the first time. The second final impact and crash, it is on our left-hand side where the monument is. We make our way down here to the crash site, where we collect documents and make sure that, Samora Machel was dead. And first light that morning, we will get picked up and we make our way back to Komati Port.
This is the house that one of the survivors ran to for help. This 72-year-old grandmother still remembers the heavy presence of South African soldiers in the area. Hans spoke about the men who was with him that night. He mentioned several names, including a former Rhodesian Selous scout operative.
He was one of the guys, one of the drivers that drive us to the area and back to Five Reke military base. He can elaborate on my story. Each guy must come forward on his own and say what he knows, or how far he's participated in the whole story.
There is no way you or me or anybody else can determine whether this man is speaking the truth or not, or whether he has ulterior motives. I'm not going to be a judge because I'm not in a position where all the evidence and where cross-examination can take place. This story points to the necessity of appointing a proper commission of inquiry.
After the break, we find one of Lou's former unit members.
There was a mission of taking out of the aircraft, which was transporting the president of Mozambique.
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission investigated the possibility of a false radio beacon.
There was this military man who gave details as to how they had built this false beacon. And they had built it in such a way that it was portable, in the sense that you could load it onto the back of a truck and virtually carry it wherever you wanted it to carry. And in this particular case, they put it on the back of the truck, and I assume they drove the truck to the foot of the mountain. It was quite clearly somebody who was in military intelligence, which is why he had this inside knowledge. And as I say, Zenzile Khoisan had followed very closely that leg of the investigation.
The allegation that a false beacon could have been employed as a decoy to lure the aircraft off course, that was specifically and fully investigated by this Commission of Inquiry. Would those three eminent foreigners, including an astronaut, would they ever have risked their reputations to be part of an inquiry and a conclusion which were not based on incontrovertible facts?
But the subsequent TRC investigation raised a number of unanswered questions. Investigator Senzile Khoisan says an interview with a former operative called Marquez confirmed suspicions about the existence of a false beacon.
GJ Marquez is a former member of the Portuguese security forces who obtained in colonial Mozambique. They had actively gone and sourced, that was our information, they sourced a beacon. They were actively developing an electronic capacity to bring a plane off course. There were also people inside the Mozambican government who knew where the president was going. They must be questioned. I believe not only South Africa, but SADC owes history the right to tell what happened with this great man.
What is equally strange is that one of the survivors suggested that they had been shot down.
Então, mal que nós estávamos para tomar posição avião naquela zona, eu sabia que o avião estava aqui dentro do território da Sul-África. Só vimos o avião achar aquilo que levou tiro.
Professor Andre Thomashuizen is a former Renamo advisor. At the time, Renamo was a rebel movement opposing Machel's Frelimo government. Thomashuizen also raises the possibility that the plane was shot down.
There is a protocol, minutes of a meeting of what was then called the Politburo in the Soviet Union of 22 October 1986, chaired by Gorbachev, and in this minutes, at the end, there's a point number 2 concerning activities in connection with the death of Samora Machel, President of the People's Republic of Mozambique, Gorbachev. We need to make a decision about measures in connection with the death of Machel. Comrade Aliyev will fly to Mozambique tomorrow. The last report of our pilot was, we have been shot down. Aliyev, the pilot, is now in the South African Republic. Gromyko, all measures should be taken to visit him and set him free through the Red Cross. Possibly it was hit before the undercarriage came down to make an emergency landing. There were a strange disappearance of a turbine, yes.
There was a view that some of the top leadership, even within Frelimo, were not uninvolved in the killing of Samora Machel.
If all these allegations continue, and imaginations and figments of the imagination, then my reaction is very simple and very clear. Appoint a new commission.
We finally managed to track down one of Hanslow's former unit members. He agreed to speak to us as long as we don't reveal his identity. Richard Musasa is not his real name.
Do you know Hanslow?
Yeah, I know Hanslow very well.
When did you meet Hanslow?
If I'm not mistaken, I think I met him in the early 80s or late 80s, somewhere there.
And what circumstances?
90s.
What was he doing?
He was employed by Special Forces.
And was he in Buzini in 86, around about October?
Yeah, of course he was in Buzini. He was there.
Oh, why was he there?
Yeah, there was a mission of, as we all know, taking out of the aircraft, which was transporting the president of Mozambique from Zambia to Maputo.
And this is the absolute truth?
Absolute truth. Well, this thing was arranged from the top brass, and a lot of people was involved, a lot of units and top brass who were also available. So it was a top priority mission to execute that mission. There were a few hand-picked people trusted from special forces who were put on site and to secure the whole area, that no one must enter that area, whoever.
Was there a false beacon?
Yeah, well, there was a false beacon which was put there, which distracted the pilot to thought that he was in Mozambique, whereas he wasn't in Mozambique and he was in Brazil, and then he descended.
Duma says he will continue with his investigation until he finds the truth. Hans Lowe and Richard Musasa's testimony is only the beginning.
It will happen. Some other people will come forward to say, no, really, I was with Hans Lowe, I'm asking for forgiveness.
Now, 2 decades later, calls for a new commission to investigate the crash are mounting. A commission that once and for all can bring closure for the 34 families and the people of Mozambique.
I done what I done because I believe it's the right thing to do. Nobody pays me, nobody threatens me. Not the Machel family, not the people I'm talking to, nobody. I don't get paid for it. I just want people to know the truth. You know the truth where you are, whether you're in prison, wherever you are, where you sit at your house, when you're going to see this program. You know the truth, I know the truth. So I can die a dignified man because there's no skeletons in my cupboard anymore.